Well, hello, Chris and Talita. I have a PowerPoint with some slides just because accounting is easier visually, in my opinion. And I'll walk through it, but I hope this is just like ask questions as we go. So it's not a formal presentation at all. So I had a couple of requests for a couple of different things to be touched on today, so I'm going to try to touch on all of them. Determining kind of program fundraising and administrative allocations, quantifying neighboring volunteer time into money, some internal control and whistleblower policy, just very minor on that, and then 2 tiny tips around finances. So we'll start on the program fundraising and administrative allocations. So just a reminder for all of us, we want to advocate for ourselves. Funders may say things like, you know, we like to fund nonprofits that are at 80% of their expenses, our program, or 90% or whatever. Advocate for yourself. Help educate funders that small nonprofits are typically not able to have the larger percentages because obviously your expenses can decrease for admin and overhead as you grow, but remind donors, like the body of literature that is out just by Googling this topic. You can send articles to donors. I've had great conversations. Our top funder is a foundation, and they used to be really strict about 80% until I shared an article with them, and now they could care less. He has not raised the question with me again. So some of the big funders, you're not going to be able to have a conversation. Obviously, they have their opinions and that's it. But just remember to advocate for yourselves. The big controversy in the nonprofit world today is that nonprofits are penalized because of this 80% requirement, and it prevents nonprofits from investing in the research and development and the infrastructure that we need to grow. So I have at times made a case to funders like the next 2 years, we're going to be down at 70% of our program, our expenses as program, because we're hiring a development person full time. That's going to allow us to grow in the future, but I'm making the case now. So anyway, that's just my initial kind of, it's still a pet peeve of mine. Obviously, we want to have as much as we can toward program, but you know, for any of us under $1 million, it's hard. And anytime you're on a growth spurt, it's hard. And so anyway, advocating for ourselves. Mm-hmm. The second piece I would say is out on members only, there is under financial resources, there is a document called Expense Breakdowns, Program, Fundraising, and Admin. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It was just re-uploaded yesterday afternoon. So there's new information on there. So if you've downloaded it before, I'll show you in the presentation here what I've added, but you might want to download it again if what I share is helpful. So this is the first tab of that document, just reminding you that you can go out to your expenses and just know in broad strokes, okay, some are program, some are admin, some are fundraising, but some of these are going to be proportional. So some of these you're going to know, we're going to have payroll, benefits, taxes, all those are going to be some program, some admin, and some fundraising. So how do we go about working at those where it's not as clean? Is everybody with me so far? Okay. So the biggest thing I would say is create a system, create a policy and a practice that you will always use. Once you create that, if you look at this last line here, there is really no standard approach as long as the method is reasonable, justifiable, and in written policy. It can likely be defended. Now, obviously, you can make it not defendable. I mean, you can make it not defendable by having a policy that says every single expense we have is programmed. Well, you can't create a policy like that. But as long as you are working as hard as you can to quantify it, you do not want to have to justify every single line item. So what we do is this next system, and I will show you what we do. It is not the only system. So there's examples here of what you can do. There's not one way. You can base it on staffing, which is what we do. So we allocate staff and base then all other expenses, all expenses that are not either program, admin, or fundraising singularly, we then base on the percentage of staff. I've heard organizations that do it based on their office space. They use the square footage of their office space that is for program versus admin versus fundraising. For those of you with remote offices, obviously that's not going to work. But any justifiable, reasonable strategy would work. As social service organizations, most of our expenses are payroll. I think that's true across the board for all of us. So that is the reason we have chosen staffing as our as what drives all the other expenses. So here's an example, and this is the spreadsheet that is now added as a tab 2 out on members only. So every year I fill out a spreadsheet that looks like this. It lists the staff names of everybody. It lists everybody's title. And then it lists the actual average hours they worked this year. So we have a tracking document that we track actual average over the course of a year. And then it's like their full-time equivalency is annualized. So for a full-time, it's 1%. So with this example, this is a 3.5 full-time equivalent staffing. And then it's saying for each of these positions, what portion is program, what portion is admin, and what portion is fundraising. So in this example, a program director, a neighborhood resource specialist, automatically, or a church engagement director, automatically, those are fully programmed. You don't have to think too much on that. That's easy. The question, sometimes we want to overthink this and say, well, the program director, though, enters some stuff in eTapestry, or the program director, I would say anything, unless they're doing fundraising work or they're also your administrative person, it's program. The biggest question, and then obviously admin is pretty easy, that's all admin. The question becomes, what of an executive director's work is program and what is fundraising? And this will tip your numbers significantly because of your size. So how you decide to allocate your top staff person is really significant.
Edith, a quick question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in an email, I noticed that it said that every staff person should have some percentage allocated to programming. But I noticed the office administrator, and maybe I'm just getting a little too picky. I'm just trying to think, how is our admin program related? Is 0% programming? How do you break that position up?
Yeah, so Mary Beth's, any portion that she relates to our network, entering neighboring volunteers, planning our conference. So those are things for us that are, but yeah, for you guys, it would be who enters your neighboring volunteer data in eTapestry? Does the person do any work on neighborhood gatherings, volunteers for that?
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Outcome tracker.
Yeah, outcome tracker for sure, for sure. So yeah, this example should be better. It should have a portion of that person. That's right. For executive directors, I would say I back into these numbers, to be quite honest. So the way I back into them is fundraising is an easy portion for me to figure out for my time, because that's allocated by our board. Our board has said that at 25 to 30% of my time is fundraising. So I know that. Admin, I don't know what I do that's admin. Finances, yeah, there we go. And then everything else becomes program. So it's HR, it is supervision, it's any outward facing public presentations, it's the work with the board. For me is program, because they are our ambassadors.
Is the work with our board, do you think that's admin or program?
You have to decide. For me, it is program, because they are our program ambassadors. But again, it is about you understanding your job description and saying, this is how I understand and justify this decision.
So Edith, I think originally on my job description, 20% of my time was allotted to program. But I realized this past year I had been spending a lot more time, and we were between case managers, and there was a new case manager. So I started just keeping track and just double checking for a 3-month period. And it was my percentage was like 35%. It was 15% more. So that was helpful to know, especially this year when we were a little low in program.
And I will say, so something to keep in mind in the job descriptions, things are called program in a very limited way. And it might be in your job description, what you need to combine for program is broader than what is in your job description. So that your note is program is calculated at, job categories 1, 3, and 5. And fundraising is 2 and 4. I don't know, but it's when you're limiting it to 3 categories, you really have to decide how do I put the other categories. Like I put financial oversight in admin, but I'm putting board in program, and I gave you my reasons for that. So you have to just kind of figure out how it all plays together. But yeah, doing some real-time studies can be really interesting. I used to require our staff to do time tracking once a year, 3 different weeks, once a year, and just picked, okay, this is a week we're going to do time studies. They hated it. And I probably only did it for 3 years, and then I gave up on it because people hated it so much. But it's a really good exercise. Okay, so where this gets us then is showing a percentage for program, a percentage for fundraising, and a percentage for admin. Watch your rounding, that's always an issue. Basically, then this staffing configuration is then what is applied to all these unknown categories. you apply it equally to payroll, medical, dental, taxes, IRA. You don't have to go back then and do the actual with each of those line items. So it saves you a lot of time. It becomes one formula you use across the board. Instead of going back in. Now, if you start thinking actual would be better, and you want to do all that minutia work, it's okay. Like that could be your policy, but it's a lot of work typically to get to often very similar numbers.
Can I ask, so but payroll and taxes, people have different salaries.
Yep. And you just have to say, this is our policy. So yeah, they do. They do. I mean, again, you can pick actual. That's an actual strategy. It's just really more time consuming. So we just have not used that. And this is, I will say, this is one that our accountant had recommended for us like 15 years ago, and we just haven't wavered from it.
What about staff travel here? What about like your fundraiser, your development person traveling?
So our thinking is our development people and our program people, everybody travels, and we're reimbursing travel for everybody. So we're just allocating it. Our two highest travelers, one is a program person, one is a fundraiser. I just actually did the calculations. Like, I'm just not going to take the time to do the actual calculations. So that's really all I have to share on that is just different ways you can talk to your accountant if there's a better way that you think than salary. But again, salary is typically the biggest portion of staffing is typically the biggest portion of budget, which is why we have chosen to use this system. The spreadsheet does have an error check on it just because I'm neurotic and I sometimes get it messed up and like to have that there as a double check. All right, any other questions on that? Lindsay, anything specific that would be helpful? Okay.
Well, I think about the staff training as well, training for our development person. But I see you have that, yeah, as admin and program. I'm just thinking about more specific development focused trainings.
Yeah. So again, I mean, you can break this out any way you want. Now, this example has, so yeah, these three, staff continuing ed, staff and board training, and staff travel. For us now, these are not program and admin. They are part of the formula. So yeah, we're not even quite following this, what it has here on the spreadsheet. I do think the more consistently you can apply your strategy. So what I will say is, if you cannot break an expense clearly into program, like it's all program or it's all admin or it's all fundraising, I would suggest you use the exact same methodology. That you don't try breaking one down this way and one down this way. That you could begin to skew in your favor. Whereas if you apply them all equally, it's going to be nearly a wash to if you go in each one and do the actual calculations. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is looking at quantifying neighboring volunteer time into money. We talked about this at the at the conference this past year, briefly. So just talking, just thinking through that other nonprofits, especially larger nonprofits, have already been doing this for years, and smaller nonprofits have not been as quick to do it. And I want to make the case that it's really easy to do, and there's no reason not to. Neighboring is our core mission. So let's get it on our financials. And you're reminding you that your auditor works for you. I forget who it was. Somebody said their auditor didn't want to do it. And I was like, fire your auditor. Like, your auditor works for you. And your audit, you want to reflect your mission. So this is the website, independentsector.org. And then you go to value of volunteer time. So they do have posted already for 2021. The national average is 28.54, but that is not what you want to use. That is what we use at a national level. But I will say what you want to use is there's a download available per state. And if you want these slides, Andrea can send you these slides, but you'll see your state is in and it has all the years in it. Oh, but this does not have 2021. Oh, so maybe, I don't know, maybe they don't have 2021 information per state in yet. Or maybe I just pulled this from what I had already saved from last year. But hopefully by March 31, you would be able to pull up 2021 numbers and use them for your state. So Colorado is 30.31, which is higher than the national average. Virginia, where's Virginia? 29.14, also higher than the national average. So I would say you want to save this with your financials, with your bookkeeping stuff. This would be part of your audit folder for the fiscal year. You're saving your justification. You're saving your paperwork. This is where the numbers come from. This is what you share with your auditor for tracking the numbers. Where it shows up on your financials is on your statement of activities. It will show up as on the income side as donated services and materials. So, okay, back up. You can do this for neighboring volunteers because this is your core mission and they are trained. This is not where you lump all your volunteers, your gala committee, your board, your this and your that. This is neighboring volunteers. There's regulations about what kind of volunteerism qualifies. So I can assure you that neighboring volunteers qualify. I can assure you that fundraising volunteers do not. But the good thing is this is going to help your program percentage numbers. So you're adding donated services here and you're quantifying it by saying we're going to take a number. So this past year, let's say we had 100 neighboring volunteers. We're going to take it times, we think on average, they're getting their training at 5 hours. And then we think they're giving an average of 3 hours a month. Some are given 10, some are giving 0, and we're thinking 3. So then you're going to average 3 hours times 12 months times 100 neighboring volunteers. Again, you want to estimate low on your number of hours because you're doing collective neighboring volunteers for the year. You're doing your total neighboring volunteers for the year. Some of them might have signed on in March. Some of them might have signed on in April. Again, it's an average. You're just trying to get a ballpark number. Otherwise, what you need to do is actually go into each individual neighboring group and calculate that way. And as you grow, that will become really cumbersome. So it shows up here on donated services and materials. And then it shows up as an expense under in-kind support under program services. So we track our 3 different programs, but that's where you're going to see it on your, so it's going to show up as income, and then it's going to show up also as expenses. Now, what you're seeing up here, the reason they don't equal, this one has 114, this one has 77. The reason they're not showing up is because some of this is donated materials, which is fundraising, which for us goes under fundraising. Yeah, any questions on that? So you're basically in your accounting software. If you are making accrual entries at the end of March, this entry would actually be a debit to expenses called neighboring in-kind services or something like that, or programming, and it would be credit to in-kind income. So if you're an accounting nerd and you do your own accrual entries, that's your accrual entry. So on the back end, let me just say a few, any questions on all that? I'm going to change subjects. So any questions on quantifying your neighboring volunteer hours as donated income?
This is so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we've started doing it. It's been great for our percentages.
Awesome. Okay. Just a little bit about internal controls. Just a reminder, again, to us as a network, I cannot tell you how important it is that you have internal controls and that your board treasurer is aware of your policy on internal controls. If you do not have a current policy on internal controls, please talk to Andrea or I. It is out on members only. It is the most important thing financially you can do for your affiliate. There is so much at stake. That is all I can say. There is so much at stake on this. You want to, whoever is doing your bookkeeping, you want to empower your bookkeeper to be asking questions, pushing back. My best moments with Mary Beth are when she says, I don't think we should do this. Or why are we doing this when it comes to money? Somebody who is asking questions of you as a leader, like that's your best person. If you use credit cards or bank cards, your treasurer should sign off on every monthly statement. So nonprofits, especially small nonprofits, are getting in trouble across the board. There's articles every day on this because a staff member pulls out a cash withdrawal or buys thousands of dollars of gift cards. Have a credit card policy, educate your staff on appropriate use, train all new staff, and then train annually. But the biggest thing is that for your own safety, for the safety of your policies that the legacy you want to leave in the future, is that your treasurer should be signing off on every monthly statement, not me, but our treasurer. So this way, our treasurer is able, they're not going to know our expenses like Staples for $320. Is that legitimate? That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is, were there cash withdrawals? That's something you would want to make sure your treasurer is signing off on every month, is those, it used to be 25 years ago, nobody had a credit card. There was petty cash, and there was, everything was by check. And so that's a much easier internal control than when we have bank cards. Some affiliates have bank cards, some have credit cards, whatever you're using. That statement is what you want your treasurer to be signing off on. And
When
then
you say
just
sign off, do you mean like we're storing a document they physically sign, or just they're keeping an eye on things?
you want evidence that they have looked at it and given their approval. So for us, what it looks like, our treasurer is in Pittsburgh and we're here in the Philadelphia area. So for us, what that looks like is Mary Beth sends it to our treasurer, copies me on it, and the treasurer responds, reply all, and Mary Beth saves as a PDF that email response. Approved. Or it might be approved, but answer these two questions for me. What's this and what's that? It's a really good practice. It means that we are not in and of ourselves assuring the financial well-being of our organization, that somebody else has an eye on it with us.
Edith, did you see that Jill has a chat here wondering if they're the only location that still uses checks and all of their funds go through their treasurer?
Yeah, that at your size, Jill, that makes the most sense. And that is definitely what I would recommend. But as you grow, it gets harder and harder to do that. When we moved to credit cards, I still have such anxiety about our credit cards because it means that at any one moment, we have that much exposure. So if we have 8 staff who have credit cards and everybody has a $2,000 limit, we have $16,000 of exposure out there. And in terms of risk management, that's just an area of risk that you want to make sure that is proportional to your annual budget.
Hey, Edith, we've been talking about internal controls around rent payments and more transparency. And I'm not sure how to give our treasurer what she wants. Yeah, and I know that I think of these controls as a way to protect myself. Mm-hmm. So I'm not resisting that suggestion. I'm just not sure what to do.
So what is she looking for? What's your sense?
Well, before they've said, oh, the board or the treasurer would sign off on kind of a spreadsheet of rent assistance, but that fluctuates, to be honest. And mom's in crisis or a job loss or that type of thing. Or she said, we could have like a fake, landlord that we're writing checks to every month. But we do save our leases and we have W-9s.
Yeah, and I would say at your size, Lindsay, you should be the check and balance on that, not your board. So it's going to vary. At Chris's size organization, it's going to be different. So it's an organizational size. So sometimes your board doesn't grow with you. So one way, maybe at Chris, maybe, I don't know what you guys do, but maybe at your size, one way to do it would be to print a transaction list of rental assistance that goes to the treasurer every month. And the treasurer could, there could be a check and balance system in that. But Lindsay, you know, at your size, what you want to do is you want to use your program director as one level and you're the signing off, not
Yeah,
your
that's what we're doing.
treasurer.
We are actually doing that. Like she prepares everything and then I write the checks and
Yep. So
Yeah,
that's
and
your double check. So it's a matter of size. And once you can do internal controls, more of that will be moved internally. Some things like the credit card and bank card recommended just across the board, it's always the treasurer. Because it could be the executive director making cash withdrawals. So like that's just kind of a standard recommended thing. So yeah, I forget what I was gonna say.
So we cut our checks, our rent checks directly from the bank account. And so I approve the rental assistance budget with the case managers. And then they submit every month the rent payments, how much and who it's to be paid to. And I get CC'd on that, but that goes to the treasurer.
So the beauty of that system is that it's a two-person system. So you would have to collude with a neighbor, with your case manager for there to be fraud. So that's what you want to just like, anytime there's a two-person system, it's a strong control. Okay, just the last thing there that I have is empowering staff as whistleblowers. When we are leading well, we are making sure that we are trying to create transparency across our team. So for us, for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, what we have been doing is every year we update our whistleblower policy. And every March, I send a notice to our staff. I attach our whistleblower policy and I copy our board chair and our treasurer. I think I think that's right. Those are our two whistleblower people, and circle them in that I've updated the staff and that I'm inviting staff to be aware of our whistleblower policy and be aware of our desire for transparency financially. And the whistleblower policy is out on members only, which we took from the in Pennsylvania, it's the Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations, but they're in every state. And then just two tips. If you are not pleased with your current auditor, we love our auditor. I'm always willing to advertise for them. Lindsay, are you using B. Berkvall?
yeah, we work with Patricia and she's been great. Really like her a lot.
So she's up in, I think, Maine or Massachusetts or somewhere. She does our audit too. So with remote capabilities, you can have your auditor anywhere these days. Also, just a recommendation that B. Berkvall always makes is to use QuickBooks. And if you do not have a physical office, to use QuickBooks online. So that's it. That's all I got. Any other financial insights or questions?
I think I just continually struggle with like, there's so much going on. You know, we've had like 10 crises already today. I don't know what's going on today, but it's been a nightmare this morning. And so it's just hard to find the space to get toward kind of these policies. And I'm hoping we're, you know, with hiring more staff, that's helping us get there. But yeah, it's just a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have whistleblower policies. And last year we adopted quite a few, and our treasurer is very engaged. So we're not totally
Wonderful.
off hinge.
the challenge I find is not just creating the policy, but then in a year or 2 or 3, keeping them updated and actually using them. So that's a challenge. Mary Beth is awesome with our accounting manual of just saying, hey, we have a policy, it says this, but now we're doing it this way because we've grown. Either we need to go back to how our policy says, or we need to rewrite our policy. And that's, that's great.
One thing that we discussed recently with, annual staff evaluations, we always recommend a 3% pay increase on merit. And also we looked into the percentage adjustment for inflation, which was 7% this past year. So something to keep in mind for payroll.
So that's interesting. When we researched cost of living for 2021, we saw 5.9%. Is it
This
different?
is what our treasurer told us.
Maybe there's Virginia numbers. We were using national numbers. I don't know.
Do you have a link we should look at?
I can see if I do. I think I'm pretty sure I just Googled it. Yeah, we use Social Security Administration's COLA, cost of living increase. So you can Google COLA 2021 and it comes up as 5.9.
Thank you.
Does that mean you're giving your staff across the board, like, and I try to give raises like all the time. I'm always trying to up people as much as I can, especially in this like crazy hiring environment. Are you giving them like 10% though, the 3% merit and then the 7%?
One staff who just finished a year, yes.
Okay.
So I would say my answer to that would be it depends where they're starting. So I would encourage you to be using a kind of where do you want to be with your staff? So like we have a compensation policy that says we want our staff to be in the 3rd quartile compared to their peers, so that they are making either right at what the average, the 50th percentile would be the average of what their peers would be making. The 75th percentile would be they're doing better than 75% of their peers. We want to be in that 50 to 75% range with all our positions. So we are making sure we're not just looking at COLA, we're also looking at like, what would it take to rehire that person? Because I will tell you this past year, we've had to bump up direct service staff because, during COVID, we're out in, our team is out in, anybody doing case management is out in people's homes. So those were the biggest things we were attentive to in 2021. That's where our big raises went into, was our program team. Now this year we're finding, there's some other team members that we've slipped down in. And so we are just trying to be really, which means what we're trying to do is always make sure for 2022, we're able to hire at that same level. It's ridiculously crazy out there right now in terms of hiring. I don't know if anybody's hiring, but it is crazy. And if we're not paying our current staff what we'd have to pay to replace them, we're just kicking ourselves in the, yeah.
I had to pay our program manager a lot but that's what their average is. It's more than I thought it's in the low 50s, but that's what it is here in Denver for a program manager.
That would seem really low in our area.
Really? Low 50s for program manager?
Yeah, but I mean, you have to go by your area. Our two counties, Lancaster and Chester, are very different.
Hmm.
Because one is central PA and one is southeastern PA. So we struggle with that.
What is the website that you use to see that quartile?
Oh, that's a policy we have. We have a compensation policy. So out on members only, there's a one-page sample compensation policy that helps direct our work. So we have decided as an organization, we want to be average and better than average. We're not going to be the top of the heap, but we want to be, in that third quartile. But then we go to Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations, and we ask them for their current salary range document. So it's like a 200-page document. I know Colorado has it. I'm pretty sure Virginia has it too. You have to pay for it. It's a couple $100, but it's worth having. And what we found out with Pennsylvania is they were like, sorry, we haven't done it since 2015, and we don't plan on doing it again for a couple of years, but here's the formula. You take the 2015 number and then you multiply it by this number. They gave me a number. I think it was like 15% or something. So we had to take the numbers in the books and then multiply it by 15% to get 2022 numbers. So, I mean, it was quite, and you have to figure out which position yours best matches with how they define. So, I mean, we have a board committee that does this, and we went through every position to make sure, and we found out, I think it's 3 of our positions this year. Does that sound right, Andrea? I think 3 of our positions this year, we were not at the third quartile. So those folks are the ones getting the biggest bump this year. Last year, it was program staff.
Right.
So we're, in many ways, for us, we just try to keep up with, so we don't ever lose staff who go somewhere else because they can get better. I mean, I guess everybody, you'd always struggle with that. We're not going to be at 100%. We're not going to be the top payer, but. Talita, I'm curious, when you hired Michelle, did salary seem like an obstacle at all? He would be our latest case manager.
Yeah, no, it was more than what she was getting in her previous job.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that's where we can be, that's not what would keep somebody from taking a job. And I think if you can try to be in the 50th to 75th percentile, it's a win.
I think one of the things that stinks is case manager salary, no matter the size of, so our struggle has been the organization is growing quickly. So then that really changes like my range or the development manager's range. But those poor case managers, it just stays the same. It's terrible no matter what size your organization is.
I mean, even with COVID, because my experience with COVID is like, we had to really say this matters, and we're bumping up program staff.
What is your program hourly? We do ours hourly because ours are all of our part-time, our case managers. What is the range for you all?
I don't know. Ours are all full-time, so I don't know hourly rates.
Just wondering.
Oh, let me.
Just like divided by half is usually the hour.
So 24. Does that sound right, Talita? 24 to 26?
Yes,
Yes.
For case managers.
Yeah.
We're at 21 to like 2350 is our range right now.
Okay.
That's helpful to know.
I think Chester County might be 25 to 27. I kind of forget. I know there's a little bit of a difference. Maybe it's not a whole dollar difference, but I think there's a little bit of a difference between the two counties.
Amy's going to be leaving. She's just in grad school and she has like a private counseling practice. So we're going to hire full time for that position to replace her. And so that'll be, it seems like it's hot. Yeah. So just wondering, that's helpful to know.
Edith, can we share the recording of this call with our board treasurer and finance committee chairs, both our board members?
I just made a note of that, Chris, that I think that's the perfect thing to do with this.
Yeah.
That's-
I
Love your questions.